I'm Neil Ward for Kit Guru. We saw the bequiet Pure Base 500DX at CES a few months ago, and at the time I made it clear that this case is a variant of this case, the basic Pure Base 500. Pure Base 500, James reviewed it late last year, and I did a build in it with Dave Alcock from Alpha Cool very late last year, just before CES in fact. So James did a build with an all-in-one, I've done a build with a full custom loop. We put the 500 to the test, and we quite liked it. It's a fairly average case, but it makes no pretense to airflow. The top panel is solid, bequiet supplies an alternate mesh top, which goes on like so, but the front is solid. The 500DX, it's gone mesh. In addition to mesh, the 500DX also has RGB. bequiet's very first foray into the world of RGB. It's addressable RGB in the front panel with a small amount in the side as well, which will show through this glass window. To accommodate the RGB, we've gained a button so you can manually control the RGB from the front panel. If you have an ARGB motherboard, then you can connect the RGB directly to your motherboard, just as you'd expect. We also have a USB Type-C, however we've lost one of the Type-A's. This is clearly a new front panel because it's got the new RGB button. It's a bit of a shame they haven't added the Type-C in addition to the original two Type-A's, but hey-ho. Behind the front panel, wow, that's a pull. We now have a full-length mesh filter. We've also got a contact pad to control the RGB, which mates up here. The filter unclips. You can see there are 4 holes down the side of the frame. These holes are not present in the original 500. So while the frames are very similar, they are not quite identical. The original 500 will continue to be on sale alongside this elevated 500DX model. Inside the chassis we have 3 fans, one at the front, one at the back, and now one in the roof. These are 140mm Pure Wings 2 models. The changes from the original 500 to the new 500DX amount to a mesh front panel with ARGB, a small amount of ARGB in the side. You've gained a USB Type-C in the front panel. You have an extra fan. The regular Pure Base 500 with a window sells for £80 in black or £85 in white or grey. The new 500DX sells for £90, which is a tiny premium when you consider the extra hardware and features. ARGB, mesh front panel, USB Type-C and an extra fan. That sounds on the face of it like a really good deal. Our test PC consists of an AMD Ryzen 9 3900X CPU, so a full fat 12-core 24-thread monster. The cooler on that processor is bequiet's own Dark Rock 4. Motherboard Gigabyte X470 Aorus Gaming 7 Wi-Fi. Supports ARGB and also USB-C. It's doing a fine job in this build. Memory is 16GB of G-Skill Trident Z RGB running at 3200 MHz. And the graphics card, Gigabyte RTX 2080 Super. That's a Windforce model. The power supply, bequiet's Dark Power Pro 11 750W Platinum rated. SSD's hidden away under one of the heat shields. It's a 240GB Toshiba RC100. It's a full-on PC. Under load it draws about 400 watts at the wall socket. It's enough hardware to stress the cooling without a shadow of a doubt. Building the PC quite straightforward. However, as James mentioned in his original review of the Pure Base 500, this section up here where the EPS cables come through and the fan at the back is located above the I/O, it's quite tight for space. To install the Gigabyte motherboard, it has a back plate on the board. I removed both the top and the rear fans to give myself some working room, put the board in place, secured it. Then I fed through the power supply cables from the rear, hooked those into place, connected them. Then I reinstalled the fans. Another 5 to 10 millimeters in the roof of the case and also perhaps on the width would make a big difference. It also looks tight for space down at the foot of the board where the headers and connectors come through, but actually it was okay. It's the top of the case that's the issue rather than the bottom. Nonetheless, I'm never going to complain about a bit more space. James also mentioned in his Pure Base 500 review that the cable cutouts don't have any grommets. He's quite correct. would be better to see those. Certainly some of the higher end Be Quiet cases have grommets. This is a lower end case, doesn't have them. In terms of the pricing, having built into this case now, I am mystified by the tiny differential between the Purebase 500 and this 500DX. It seems to me that if this case makes sense at £90, then the Purebase 500 is far too expensive at 80, should be 70, maybe 65. If that was the differential, 20, £25, then you'd have a bit of an argument on your hands. As things stand, this DX for a mere £10 more, you'd pay that for the fan. So it makes perfect sense to go for the DX and just forget the Purebase 500 even exists. Another reason why I say that is that in terms of cooling, whether you have the solid panel on the Purebase 500, which is not after all solid, it does have intakes at the sides, or whether you have the mesh front panel on this DX, is pretty much a matter of aesthetics. In terms of cooling, it makes very little difference. The PureWings 2 fans in the chassis run at a maximum 900 RPM. They are slow fans. And I ran the cooling in two configurations, full speed, i.e. 900, and 500 RPM, i.e. half speed. So starting with the fans at full speed with the case as you see it, i.e. the mesh panel installed, the CPU ran at 82 Celsius. But then again, as I say, it's a Ryzen 9 3900X. Under heavy load, it runs hot. And the system was in equilibrium, but 82 degrees. Slowing the fans, 85 degrees, leaving the fans at full speed, and switching to the Purebase 500 front, they are interchangeable, 85 degrees. Removing the mesh front panel, 80 degrees. So the two extremes are 80 degrees with the front panel removed, 85 degrees either with the fans slowed down or with that so-called solid front panel installed. That's quite a narrow window of operation. It essentially means it doesn't much matter what you do with this chassis, your CPU, if it's a high-end CPU, is going to run in the low 80s, and that's all there is to it. Open it up completely, 80. What can you say? It's worth mentioning that the Ryzen 9 3900X runs at just over 4 gigahertz under full load, so it's doing a lot of work. And that is why I say that the mesh front panel, it's an aesthetic choice. If you prefer mesh to solid, then go with it. Similarly, of course, the ARGB is obviously aesthetic by definition. However, it works perfectly well. I've gone with a black and orange look for this build in honour of Be Quiet. But the RGB, yep, it works. I'm happy with it, but it's clearly not a game changer. So many people have ARGB. If that's what you want, terrific. The USB Type-C, I like that. That's definitely something I want. The third fan, sure, why not? A bit of extra cooling just to help the air come out of the roof. Yep, there's no argument there. As I say, the thing is, it's only a £10 premium, and that's why the DX is a winner. Not because it is a brilliant case, it's perfectly okay, but it's nothing special. It's because the Purebase 500, to my mind, is overpriced at £80. What would I change about the DX? Well, the front of the case is clearly working well, no argument about that. The panel's fine, the lighting's fine, the looks, the aesthetics, the USB-C, all that, terrific. When you move slightly further back, the SSD mount is a bit of a pain because I'm not using it, but if I remove it, I have a great big hole in the back panel of the case. Similarly, the drive caddy down the bottom there at the front, if I pull that out to give myself some more cable management space, I've got a hole in the power supply shroud. They haven't really thought that through to my mind. So the front's fine, but move back a few inches, not so great. When you get right to the rear, as I say, where the EPS connectors have to come through, that's very tight for space. That could do with some work. Not major problems, not by a long chalk, but things that could be tweaked. Those PureWings 2 fans, I may have mentioned this in previous reviews, they are 3-pin connectors rather than PWM. I like PWM, I want PWM. Straightforward voltage control, that's not so good. I'd much rather have had PWM fans than ARGB, without a shadow of a doubt. While we're on that subject, I've now got a fan on the CPU cooler and 3 fans on the case fans, that's 4 in total. This motherboard supports 4 fans without any difficulty whatsoever, but you're in the territory where a small fan hub would be a good idea. But the ideal thing would be PWM fans and a PWM hub. So that is one area I'd definitely like to see a little tweak done, please Be Quiet. Perhaps call it the Purebase 501 DX, because we are talking just a small upgrade. But as things stand at this price, this case is very good. The bequiet Pure Base 500 on the other hand, it's too expensive, it needs to be cheaper. So overall I would say a moderate success. I'm happy. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, hit the bell button, subscribe. Please subscribe. Head over to kitguru.net, read our reviews, read our news, look at our photos, head over to the merch store, buy yourself a t-shirt. I'm Neil Woodard for Kit Guru. This is the bequiet Pure Base 500 DX.